Hi, I'm Seema.
Hi, I'm Surili.
Today we are excited to have Dr. Mani join us. Dr. Mani is a board certified physician specializing in occupational and environmental medicine, preventative medicine, as well as non-operative musculoskeletal medicine. Qualified medical clinical consultant, independent medical examiner. She is also an amazing advocate for climate change and public health, and we're so thrilled to have her join us today.
Great. Thank you guys so much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure.
Well, it's all our honor. We're absolutely excited to be speaking with you today and to learn more about what interests you in this climate and health space. So we're thrilled to talk about and learn more about your journey from doctor to climate advocate. How do you use your voice as a physician to advocate for climate solutions?
That's a great question. Honestly, it's still evolving over time. So I was trained in the traditional medical paradigm. You go to medical school, you go to residency, and then you start working as a clinician. You see patients all day, and that's pretty much it. But over the last couple of years, I realized that climate change and its impact on health is affecting not only my patients, but my community. And I felt that I needed to step up my game to be able to help folks in my community, in my world. And I felt that advocacy was the best way to do that because I wasn't reaching as many people as I could. In my clinic, I just see patients one at a time, individuals coming in for a variety of different health ailments. And as a doctor, I can treat them, but a lot of times we're looking at the social determinants of health and we look at the day-to-day of their existence. I treat a lot of workers who work in agriculture, for instance, and they would be coming in with hypertension. But then when you kind of get to know them and kind of understand their day-to-day, you realize, oh my goodness, this guy is actually spending all this time out in the fields, day after day, exposed to heat. They don't have adequate shade, adequate water. They're not able to take the rest breaks that they need, and they don't have time to take their medications. So honestly, you can kind of focus in not only on the medical condition, but understanding all the other things that come with that. And over the years, I began to realize that, I can treat a person for high blood pressure. I can treat a person for diabetes. I can treat a person with a wrist injury. But can I actually solve the main issues when it comes to exposures to heat, exposures to a variety of different conditions in their ambient environment? I mean, that's a really, really tough problem to solve. And a lot of my colleagues and I have decided that we can do what we can in the clinic. We can treat the individual person. But at the end of the day, we need to realize the real root causes of disease. And especially in the current climate that we live in, folks are exposed to a lot of different things. I mean, heat is the number one thing that I can think of. I live in California right now, but I used to live on the East Coast, and it's been a pretty hot summer. A lot of folks have been exposed to, strong heat. And, even in places that were not traditionally considered super hot. I'm sure you heard about what's been happening in the Northwest this summer. Seattle, Portland, even parts of Canada have been exposed to high heat. And a lot of these places don't have adequate cooling centers. Many people don't even have air conditioning units in the Pacific Northwest because they're not used to that kind of heat. And if you think about the economic ramifications of this, I mean, it's huge. Folks aren't able to go into work. They get sick. They have to go to the hospital. There's this whole ripple effect that happens as a result of these types of exposures in the ambient environment. So really over the last couple of years, I've been making a full vested effort to focus on advocacy, looking at social media as a way to spread the word about heat, climate, and everything else in between so we can do better as a society.
Thanks so much for sharing that perspective. It definitely has been hot. You started to allude to your work on being active on social media. And, I appreciate that you're on Twitter at Dr. Berenji, MD, on Facebook. I'll let you share your handles. And on Instagram at Boston, LA Climate Doc.
Yes, that is correct. I know there's a lot of different handles for a lot of different social media, but definitely social media has been a way where I can educate not only my colleagues, but really trying to educate anyone who's interested about the climate, about the environment, and what they can do to make those little incremental changes in their day-to-day. So that way we can actually make some good and really make a difference when it comes to our environment.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. I definitely appreciate that. And, you know, as a physician, we often hear physicians, clinicians, nurses are a trusted voice when it comes to climate and health information. So what do you think the role the medical field should play in climate health discourse? And what role do you hope they will play in driving equitable climate solutions, whether it's with patients or even key decision makers like women leading households?
Yeah, so these are really great questions, at least for my colleagues to the day-to-day practice of medicine, just asking the right questions. A lot of times folks come in with a variety of different symptoms, and we have to be the detective. We really need to kind of probe, you know, ask questions about family history, ask questions about, you know, any type of you know, food or any other type of issue that may have caused that set of symptoms to arise. But a lot of times we don't really ask about, you know, hey, where do you work? Hey, you know, where do you live? You know, these things do come into play, and understanding these social determinants of health really is important to capture at every clinical visit, whether it's in the emergency room, whether it's in the outpatient clinic, whether it's in the operating room. I mean, these are things that as clinicians, we need to ask every single time, because a lot of times we miss it. And we don't systematically ask these questions about where people live, what they do for a living, you know, what kind of exposures they have. And I think as clinicians, we need to make sure that everyone is on the same page on that. No matter how pressed you are for time, you have to take the time to ask those questions. Because a lot of times you can learn a lot about a patient just by asking where they live. I used to work at Boston Medical Center, which is the one of the main hospitals in the New England area where we serve underserved patients, folks from the African American community, Hispanic American community. And a lot of times these folks live in areas where there's high ambient concentrations of particulate matter in the ambient air. And these folks live near highways and major intersections. You know, many times these folks develop respiratory conditions like exacerbations of their asthma or their COPD. And a lot of times there's a environmental cause for that. If we're just treating the symptom and not the root causes of it, then we're never going to be able to address these issues. So from a clinical perspective, I highly encourage my colleagues to ask about those social determinants of health, including anything related to the ambient environment. In terms of the general population as a whole, especially women, women have a lot of power and a lot of say when it comes to climate change and health. We have families, we make decisions for our day-to-day in our homes. We actually can make a difference when it comes to making those climate conscious decisions about what we're purchasing and how we're impacting our daily environments. So I highly encourage everyone out there to find a person or persons that you like on Instagram or Twitter or whichever social media outlet that you use, and really try to educate yourself about these topics. Being able to make those decisions about what products to buy, you know, how you can make a difference in your community. There's so many resources out there on these social media outlets, and you don't even have to spend a lot of time researching. If you find one or two trusted sources of information, that can be your go-to. A lot of folks like the news, like the New York Times, but a lot of people rather just hear it straight from the source, like someone like myself. It's amazing how patients respond to me when I talk to them about what I do to make a difference on climate. For instance, I just bought an electric car. And honestly, I think it's the best decision I've ever made because I actually don't have to go to a gas station anymore. It's very liberating to know that just by making that decision to buy an electric car, that I'm actually making a huge difference to the environment. I no longer have to worry about my greenhouse emissions from my car because I don't have any emissions. And I try to be conscious as to where I'm going. So I try not to use as much electricity to fuel my car. So honestly, I think everyone can make a little change in their day-to-day, whether it's purchasing an electric car, whether it's planting a tree in their garden, whether it's doing some outreach in the community. Honestly, everyone can make a little change in their day-to-day and ensure that they're making those decisions to make our world a cleaner place.
You know, I really appreciate that perspective on how every person can make one small change or a series of small changes. But, you know, as we think about how people come to their pathways, you know, what advice might you have for those in the medical field, whether a student or an experienced professional, to help them get more involved at that local level? And maybe,
Yes.
you know, pull their path more to this work.
Yes, honestly, I think a lot of the medical students that I've engaged with over the last few years are definitely on this path. I've had the fortune of interacting with students at BU as well as students from across the country. There's so many different Facebook and Instagram groups where medical students are getting together and really trying to move the needle when it comes to climate change and health. So honestly, I think they're already on board. My main struggle is getting my older colleagues to get on board, trying to make those decisions at the hospital when it comes to purchasing and being able to find alternative sources of energy to keep our clinics and operating rooms running. To me, that's really the main driver for education on climate and sustainability, is really reaching everyone, especially those folks who just may not have the time nor really ever had any type of understanding about how their decisions in the clinic can impact the environment. So I try to educate everyone who comes across my door, whether it's a medical student or whether it's a retired colleague, making sure everyone has the right information. And there's so many different resources out there. I am actually a member of the Medical Consortium on Climate and Health, which is a great resource for all clinicians, whether you're a physician, a nurse practitioner, physician assistant, anyone in the healthcare field really can utilize these resources to not only educate themselves, but to educate patients, because that's what we do. So if we have information that's high quality, evidence-based, layman terms, anything that an 8th grader can understand, that's really the information we need to be disseminating.
I think that's absolutely inspirational and very helpful, especially because there's a long list of things we can do to, one, learn about the issue and then to do something. And because there's a menu of options and opportunities, we can really meet people where they are. And so some climate solutions may work for one community member where others may not, and it depends on where you are. If heat is your issue, then we talk about that as professionals. And if hurricane season is an issue, we talk about that too. So I love what you're saying. I love what you're doing. The Medical Consortium is a great resource for clinicians or anyone in the medical field to get involved with. With that, I want to thank you so much for
Thank you guys. This was really fun. Honestly, it's great to be able to speak with you. I'm big fans of you guys on Instagram. Please continue the great work that you're doing.
Oh, I appreciate that. It means so much. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you for following us on social media and helping us promote these really great conversations. We have so many more exciting interviews, just like Dr. Mani, coming up. So stay tuned.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you'd like to hear about, who you'd like to learn from. Leave us a message. And until next time, let's all make some noise for climate.
Thank you.